Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Donkey Kong Country 3. In the last one we started off the world K3, and now we're on to Crack Shot Croc. This is probably one of my favorite levels in the game just because it uses a good friend to a pretty good amount of effort. Because very early on the stage we are thrown in control of Squitter, and we're more or less stuck with him the entire level. Technically this is his introductory level, in that most of the other times when he shows up you get him as a bonus objective more or less. But this is the only level I think that you play entirely as him. Main mechanic here is that particular reticle. It homes in on you, and after a certain amount of time, it tries to shoot one of the fireballs like the little owl enemies fired a couple parts ago out of their cannons. With that said, like those particular fireballs, they don't count as actively hitting you until they hit the exact same plane in the level as you do. Namely, whenever you see an impact on the floor like that. It's kind of slow to follow you, and admittedly it's not the fastest with firing, so it's not too threatening. Honestly, I always think whenever I see this thing more so of its descendant, so to speak, in Donkey Kong 64 rather, which I believe when you it targets you just goes like, "Get out," or something like that, and something about that very off-putting. With that said, you're not always in danger of the reticle as it is anyway. As you may have noticed, there's been several little foreground shields in the level that you can just stand behind and they will not be able to hit you or even target you through the platforms at all. The biggest threat is that I guess they want you to be slower during these platforming portions to make your platforms count better. But as long as you just make good on keeping altitude going up for a lot of like these sections, you can avoid it pretty easily. It's maybe something that's more of a threat on a first playthrough, and once you get used to the controls and how a particular ability works, maybe it'd be less threatening. But for me, at this point, it's relatively simple to avoid, barring times like that where I just straight up forget to jump. Also, this level always reminded me of Ghostbusters 2. Pretty simple to guess why, given the pink, huh? Ghostbusters 2 was a movie I liked a lot as a kid, and I still like a lot about nowadays, but it's definitely not as good as Ghostbusters 1. I need to check out that new one, though, Afterlife. I haven't seen many movies since the pandemic started. Like, we saw the occasional one on streaming, like I saw Wonder Woman 84. But after that, I think the next movie I saw that was completely new was No Time to Die, which was the first James Bond movie I ever saw, which, odd choice for a first one, especially in theaters, but that was at a very local, small theater, so, like, pandemic stuff wasn't much of a threat there. After that, I saw Spider-Man, and that's been it so far. I like movies a lot, but, I usually approach them at my own pace rather than just going to a theater in most cases. The MCU was, like, the only exception to that by and large, and Baby Driver. But, honestly, I am one of those people, and that was really off topic, I am one of those people with Marvel that's kind of burned out after Endgame. Like, I'll see Spider-Man, I'll see some of the sequels to things I already liked, but the new stuff, very hit or miss on whether or not I'll see it. Like, I saw Shang-Chi, but that was something I saw on streaming months afterwards, and that was a really good movie. But it's not something I felt I needed to go to theaters to see in any regard. Not that I don't think it was in theaters now that I think about it, because a lot of movies are opting just to go straight to streaming immediately nowadays. And hey, they still get their money. In fact, they probably get a bit more money. It's the theaters that are in trouble from that, and that's a whole different topic. I will say when it comes to using Squitter, finding the bonus barrels is probably the easiest, because if you just see what looks like a passageway, you can just platform up to it to see if it honestly is. But we do have one of the most fun bonuses in the game to me. Now we control the reticle, and we need to take out the various Kremlings around. Important thing to note, compared to when the reticle fires at us, there is a little bit of an arc to the fireballs we're shooting now. So you need to time your shots a little bit before you actively shoot. It is a thing where there is that travel time, of course. Thankfully, they give you a good amount of time in this bonus, so you don't need to worry about actively running out of it. Or at least, there's enough time so you can get used to the arc. And once you've finished the bonus, you do need to actively shoot the bonus coin to collect it, which makes sense in terms of how hitboxes work, but it's a little bit weird because I feel like that should destroy it. With that said, by and large, this is also probably the longest level in K3, and given that it's one of the last levels in it, it makes sense. I should also note, this is another world where there is a banana bird I do not get right now, because to be frank, I forget how to get it until later on. You have to press left on the world map, I think, directly after the next level before heading to the boss fight. I just get it later on because, hey, I'm getting a lot of stuff at the end game anyway. Because the thing about getting 100% is you do need to backtrack into more or less every world for the Brothers Bear stuff anyway. So I'll be coming back here even no matter what. So I might as well have saved it until then, I suppose. And once you pass that sign, the reticle can no longer follow you, so you're safe to go on and get the iron barrel you need for coin. Again, if you mess this up, you can't get the coin, but I don't think you actively can mess that up unless you somehow hit coin in the shield itself, which in that level design I find a little hard to do, honestly. With that said, we're now on to Lem Gwin Lunge, the final level of this world, and kind of an underwhelming final ice level in the game, I think, period, now that I think about it. The big thing with this level is, first off, you got a bonus barrel right off the start. You have to kind of throw Dixie at a very awkward angle to reach it, though. The big thing with this level, as we're going to see here in this bonus, is the Lem Gwin enemies, which, as their name would slightly imply, are penguins that are just sliding around. They spawn semi-infinitely. I think you technically take out a certain amount of them, and the hole will stop spawning them. But they're always sliding at you. If they go down slopes, they speed up a little bit, and if they go down really deep slopes, they can speed up a lot. What you're meant to do in most cases is either jump between them, or if they start spawning at higher rates later on in the stage, you want to just bounce off of them over and over again like this, like Badnik bouncing out of not Mega Man, the classic Sonic games. But later on in the stage, that gets to be a little awkward. And also, we have some relatively early DK coins. It's kind of weird to see them in the first third of a stage. The big annoyance with these comes mostly just due to some of the weird hitbox issues the DKC trilogy has, where exactly above a sprite is and to the side of a sprite can kind of get blurred a little bit, especially if a sprite's lower down to the ground. So figuring out if you're going to get hit or if they're going to get hit at times can be a little bit complicated. That said, I think they're cute. And honestly, I always liked the enemy design of the Donkey Kong Country trilogy, just because, yeah, they're mostly just animals with eyes that would continue being an art style thing for Rareware into the N64 and even a lot of the GameCube era. But there's something about them that's also just kind of cute most of the time. Sometimes you just get things that are unholy abominations. I'm thinking of a boss fight from later on in this very game. More on that later on. Especially in the GBA version where they added a boss fight. More on that after we finish the next world. The ice physics in the DKC games was never too annoying to me, compared to, say, how it can be in Mario, Sonic, or Mega Man. I feel here the momentum is already kind of, I don't want to say janky, but it's definitely slower. So you don't need to worry too much about slipping and sliding uncontrollably. The big problem comes in when you have to make jumps uphill, because sometimes the momentum gets a little bit wonky. With that said, now we're on to the boss fight of K3, which is arguably the most unique boss fight in the game, because, oh, there's a reason they put a Swanky sideshow right in the way for once. Because Bleak's house is just the Swanky sideshow throwing mechanics as a boss fight. Bleak is a snowman who's located on one of two layers in the background there, a higher or lower one you can swap by using the D-pad with. And he'll just randomly show up between them, and you need to throw snowballs into them. He usually starts off in the background and then comes up to the foreground to do a volley of snowballs that he'll eventually just laugh and make himself vulnerable doing. The snowball patterns do get more complicated the further you get into the boss fight. I should note, by the way, the Game Boy Advance version changed this boss fight a little bit in that they changed all the boss fights a little bit here and there. But the biggest change to this one is you no longer have to press up or down the D-pad to select which layer Bleak is on. Either way, I just find this boss fight kind of fun. A little bit annoying to hit later on in the fight because, as you can see, the timing for hitting him gets a little bit strict. And sometimes predicting the arc of the snowball isn't exactly the easiest because you're aiming slightly to the right of where you honestly are. But thankfully, his hitbox is also a little bit forgiving in that regard. I like it when games do slightly atypical boss fight mechanics. That's why I like how in Kirby games, we get the whole usual genre shift per game of, like, here's the random space shooter stage. He exploded. He's dead now. Frosty the Snowman is just really damn dead. With that said, that is K3. Despite being an ice world, not much ice in there, but we do get access to the next brother's bear. This is Barter's Stop Shop, or whatever the hell the name of this place is. Well, good day to you, Kongs. How are you? Name's Barter. Whoops, have you seen me washers? That posing funky fella's been acting a little bit weird lately. I swear he's been working on some super secret project, but I reckon it's just some silly pipe dream. What a mess I must be in, but what's the point of worrying if you can't tell? We can't do anything with Barter until we get another item in the Brothers Bear side quest, which we're mostly saving for the end of the game anyway. For now, let's head into the next world, World 6, I think. This is Razor's Ridge. This might be my favorite overworld screen in the game. I don't know why. Something about it's just kind of warm to me. Despite having one of my least favorite stages in the game. Not this one. I'm more so thinking of the boss fight. Easily the worst boss in the game is here. Depending on the version, maybe even both times. The big thing with this boss fight, this stage, is that it's the second use of Quacks in the game, and you're going to be carrying barrels a lot with him. With that said, I believe for this stage in particular, he has the ability to throw up eggs, because I don't think he could do that back in the low G stage. If he could, I just never try. The big thing is, you gotta throw the barrels very precisely in this stage to either avoid red buzzes and hit green ones, or to just carry it around long enough to avoid these, I think those enemies' names are Copter. And it's a simple staging concept, but sometimes the timing you need to hit things is a little bit awkward. Also, if I recall, some of the little, like, unused and cut content from the Super Nintendo version of the game can be first seen in this stage, in that I think the Copter enemy has sprites for standing on the ground and then taking off, but they're never used in the game themselves, something like that. When it comes to unused or cut content, the GBA version had a lot more from my knowledge, including unused text or even more regional differences, which is weird, because I know I mentioned, I think before, the GBA version of this game was rushed, and it was compared to DKC 1 and 2's GBA versions, but there's still, like, more differences in that version than this one, which is odd, or than the other two, rather. Namely, between the overworld maps and a lot of different graphics in an entirely different world. We'll talk again about that after Razor Ridge here. There's some odd efforts in the GBA version that make it arguably the better version to play. The main reason I'm sticking with Super Nintendo is consistency. That, and I by and large prefer how the game looks on Super Nintendo to GBA, because even with, like, gamma adjusting filters to tone down the color palette of the GBA to make up for the original GBA screen, I think this game just ends up looking better on Super Nintendo, a lot crisper. Color choices, even when unmuted, or even when muted, are just more sensical. Sometimes choosing a version of a game to play when there's multiple can be a little rough. Because it's one thing if there's, say, completely different versions of a game, like, say, Sparkster on SNES versus Genesis, which are completely different games, and Aladdin on SNES and Genesis, which are completely different games. When it's largely just a difference of maybe some extra content, it gets a little bit harder to decide. Usually I opt for whichever version I'm the most comfortable with. Sometimes I do want to show off the extra content. It really depends on the game. Hence why, say with Final Fantasy IV, I showed off the PSP version, because I could show the game off to the best of my ability there. Whereas, say, with later Final Fantasies, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, honestly, because I want to show off the pixel matte remasters in some regard. I might do that for FF6, but for FF5, I'm not sure if I want to show off the Super Nintendo glitches or show off the GBA version, so I can show off some really cool stuff you can do in that one. I don't know. Choices are hard. I don't know why. In particular, the sound design of the DKC games, one of the more iconic parts of it, but just the generic grunt that enemies make when you hit them will always make me laugh. There's something about that that's just very guttural to me, and it makes me laugh. Honestly, Quacks and Squawks theoretically might be the hardest to control animal buddies in the game, because they're more or less what if you were swimming in the air, and by that's just called flying, Kyle. But the momentum with them is definitely some of the most awkward in the game, because I think it even gets shifted a little bit if you have a barrel picked up, which does not help your case in most cases. I remember for years when I first saw Copter, until I saw the sprite of it standing, I thought it was meant to be a seal enemy. No, it's another Kremling, it's another lizard, it's just that's wearing a helmet. You know, I'm only just realizing, whenever I got into this particular level aesthetic, I always got reminded of something. I'm only just now realizing it's because all the cave stages in the Donkey Kong Country trilogy look the exact damn same. There's very few differences in terms of how they texture the stone. The biggest difference is how they light it, because the cave levels in DKC 1, very dimly lit. DKC 2 depends on the actual level. This game probably has the most brightly lit stages in the series, really. And you know what? It's good-looking stone for... At this point, this was 1996, so you know what? This is pretty good-looking stone still, yeah. Because if you look at how stone was rendered on the N64, partially because of how they had to render things differently on that period, a little bit different. With that said, I joke like that, but one of the most iconic textures to me in a game ever is always going to be the boulders in Majora's Mask and Ocarina. I don't know why. There's something about that just sticks with me. With that said, we're definitely coming up on one of the trickier to get bonus barrels in the game. Right here at the end of the stage coming up, there's going to be a final copter that'll just seemingly come out of nowhere after the animal sign that'll get rid of squawks, or get rid of quacks rather. You need to bounce on top of a copter to get to that. And the rough thing about that is, since this is the first stage copter's in, you don't know that bouncing on their head doesn't damage you. So it might take you a while to find that. That's a bonus I can see people easily missing on a first run through a stage, and even maybe in a second one when they're trying to comb for it. Thankfully, if you miss the copter, you can just scroll back to the left and then scroll back to the right, and it does respawn, like so. But yeah, this can take some... I can see people missing this easily on a first run of a stage. It's also one of the latest they put a bonus barrel in a stage, besides the rare time they maybe put one behind the level flag. With that said, I know I mentioned I like this game's soundtrack in general, despite it not being as good as DKC 2's. Easily the biggest downgrade from DKC 2 in this game is the bonus theme. Because something about DKC 2's bonus stage theme is easily one of, like, the shortest but catchiest tunes on the Super Nintendo. It's just a really good version of the Donkey Kong theme. With that said, that's the end of the level. Now we're going on a wrinkly save cave. Something I'm going to need to look up between now and next time to give you an exact percentage on is... I forget exactly how the game weights what items are getting 100% between bonus stages, coins, and what. I think in general it's usually 1% per, with maybe 2% for particular items, like maybe the DK coins are worth 2%, something like that. I want to get an exact on that because I like knowing that information just for my own self. That's that time for one of the more unique Brothers Bear. This is Benny's Chairlifts. Good day, crazy kitty. My name is Benny. Me and my brother Bjorn run the chairlifts in this region. My lift will never break down. You can be sure of it. Would you like to be using the chairlift? Okay. Okie dokie. Strap yourself in and away you go. And it's a minor set piece, but I do like the animation of Kitty just sitting there. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in Part 8, we're going to be continuing through Razor's Ridge. I think finishing it off in the process. Don't quote me on that. See you guys then.